My name's Joe Moore. I'm a candidate for school board in District 6 as well, the Western Communities. My background, I have 30 years financial management experience. I spent a 30-year career with the South Florida Water Management District. It's a 16-county jurisdiction organization here located in Palm Beach County. Retired as their CFO, and then I went and served with the school district for 10 years, 2 as the CFO, and 8 years as the Chief Operating Officer. The Chief Operating Officer was really responsible for all the business side of the school district. It's a $2.3 billion organization. It's quite a sizable organization. Prior to going to work for the school district, I also served as a volunteer on their audit committee and chaired that committee for 2 years. While with the school district and as their COO, I also participated with the Council of Great City Schools. It's the largest school districts from across the nation on a financial practice peer review panel that visited school districts throughout the nation and compared practices. We basically did an audit of their financial practices and reported out to their school boards as to what the conclusions were. I'm married to Arlene, sitting on the end down there. I think some of you met her. She's a 32-year veteran teacher. Teaches here in Wellington in Mixed Forest, reading teacher for Mixed Forest, the highest reading scores in the county this year. She gets some credit for that, but certainly your colleagues had something to do with that as well. 2 adult daughters that attended Western Community Schools, actually Wellington schools, went through elementary, middle, and high school in Wellington. We've been in Wellington for 22 years. I've been in Palm Beach County 37 years. What I want to accomplish on the board is I really want to bring my finance and business background to the school board. There's nobody on the board currently, nor is there anybody running that has the kind of background that I have. I think I can help with some of the budget issues and some of those things. I've been retired for 3 years. I think it's a way that I can give back to my community. I'm proud of the endorsements that I've received. I've received the endorsement from principals and assistant principals for the school district. The district staff has endorsed me. The BizPac has endorsed me. The realtors have endorsed me. Builders and contractors have endorsed me. And a number of community leaders have endorsed me. Thank you for coming tonight.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me this evening. John Hartman. I'm in District 3. Most of you are probably not in my district, but I just want to thank the Tea Party for letting me come and speak to you. I will tell you, I feel so at home here with the Tea Party, and I just want to send my thanks to them for letting me come and talk. I'm here to talk about the issues. I'm here to talk about the things that we all care about. I want to talk about Common Core. I don't just want to talk about stopping Common Core. I want to talk about the agenda behind Common Core. It's not just good enough to say we're going to stop it. We have to know why they were trying to do it and what the motives were behind it. My background is education. I've been a teacher for the past 5 years. My passion is education. I think that education is one of the most important things in our country right now because that's where the indoctrination process is going to occur. That's when people, our children, are going to be told how to think, how to act. These are the things I want to talk about tonight. I'm just happy to be here. I'm excited. Let me tell you real quick. The first night I spoke at an organization called Cobra. I was a little out of my element, but I'm gaining a lot of momentum right now. I'm just super excited to be here with you. Let's have a good evening.
You can tell that these candidates are not used to having this much time to speak because none of them spoke for 3 minutes. Well done. Very well done.
Keep going if you want.
All right, so we're going to start with some questions that I've got here, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for some questions that we may not have thought of. All right, first question, and each of you will get 1 minute to answer it. Common Core has become a huge and divisive issue in the last few years. The math that it teaches is incomprehensible and even nonsensical in the opinion of many parents. The so-called reading comprehension lessons seem to be laced with far-left propaganda. What are your thoughts on Common Core and whether it should have any place in Florida? And why don't we reverse the order this time and start with John.
Common Core. one of the things I just said when I spoke with you is let's take a look at not just what Common Core is, but what's the agenda behind Common Core. And again, my background is an educator. Common Core is designed to program our children to think a certain way. Now, the thing about Common Core that's interesting is we want to improve critical thinking. And when the people pushed Common Core, they were very smart how they did it. They wanted to tell us that Common Core is going to improve critical thinking. We all would agree that that's something that we would want. But what they didn't really tell us was that the curriculum is designed to make our children think a certain way. As a teacher, I've seen it firsthand. So from my perspective, Common Core, it is one of the biggest threats we're facing right now, and we have to repeal it. What was the other part of the question? Another part.
Should it have any place at all in Florida?
Common Core should have no place in Florida at all. In fact, the thing is, I don't think we have to just stop with Common Core.
Sorry.
Oh, it's time? Okay, sorry.
All right.
I think Common Core is probably the most misunderstood concept floating through education currently. I'm not for the current definition of Common Core. Let me be clear about that. What it started as was to develop a series of national standards by subject and by grade level. I think as minimum standards that's an admirable goal, to develop a standard that says every second grader throughout America should achieve this level in reading, as an example. Where it got out of control, I think, was when folks at the state level and the national level started to dictate how the curriculum would be structured to meet those standards. I think that's a local decision. It should always, my wife, as I told you, is a lifetime educator. She knows how to teach reading. If they developed the reading standard for second grade, she teaches second grade. She would know how to achieve that same time. And so, thank you.
You can hold your applause till after all the candidates have answered the question. We'll move along a lot better. Thank you.
You all can agree that standards is a good thing. How the child is going to learn that standard is not. Every child does not learn the same way. Every adult does not learn the same way. We want to have a standards and we want to measure those standards. High-stakes text is not the answer either. But when you actually look at the Common Core and what they've actually done to the standards, they've actually taken away so much from the classroom. When you actually stop and think, this year's third graders were the first third grade year where they are Common Core kids. They've had Common Core since they entered kindergarten. 55% of them are proficient in reading. What have we done to them? We're not meeting their needs. We're not teaching them how they learn. We're failing them. We're teaching them how we think they should learn. And that's not how we treat a student. That's not how you meet the needs of a student.
Thank you. I've been on the front line as your school board member. When it first came to our attention that this is coming down from Washington, from higher ups, and not input from the local level, I took a stand at the school board meeting and said, this is wrong. I take that stand today because it was not implemented correctly, even if we have started it with the kindergarten, first, second, and third grade. It is not the thing to do. Right now, we are in a turmoil with this whole Common Core issue. It's called Florida Standards now. Click, 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 which really means Common Core. It's damaging to our children. Standards, I believe in. High standards are important. But what we're doing now, we're demolishing the input of parents, schools, communities, and with this whole process here, our teachers are at risk, our students are at risk, and our communities are at risk. I've been with you from the beginning, taking a stand against this, and it has no place in Palm Beach County or anywhere else.
Continuing with the Common Core theme, because of Common Core, there's a huge disconnect in educating our special needs children. The Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act requires these kids to be given individual education programs in accordance with their abilities. but Common Core requires their IEPs to be matched to the Common Core standards of their grade level. Are you prepared to fight for that for our children, to fight that for our children?
In my first year teaching, I taught special ed, so I think I have a pretty solid background to understand what IEPs are and the entire special education process. For anyone that has taught special ed, it is absolute insanity to think that you can have a program that is meant for each child. Anybody that knows special ed knows that each child learns in a different way. This is the concept of differentiation. It's a big term in education. So to answer your question, I would strongly fight against any program that attempts to pigeonhole our special education children. So I would strongly fight against it, and I think anybody that's in education realizes that just would never work. Thank you.
I agree. The whole goal, in my mind, of public education is to teach every child to their full potential. And the term, and I know this is a term that's used in educational circles, but I think it's the model that I subscribe to certainly, is differentiated instruction. You know, to have that teacher be able to adapt that instruction to the needs of every student in his or her classroom. And so I don't see how you can have the one-size-fits-all curriculum or instruction and achieve that goal.
One size fits all. ESC, it's my life the last 13 years. I could go on forever, but I won't, I promise. I don't even know where to begin. You cannot have one set of rules, one set of textbooks, one set of standards for every child. An IEP is an individual education plan. It's an addition to, not in place thereof. It's to help children fill in those gaps. So our children would be actually working on the standard, and we would have their IEP closing in those goals. It's an addition to, and so many people actually think it's one or the other, and it's not. You want your child to actually say one day, I no longer need an IEP. You want the team to actually say, he's great, he's fine, she's great, she's fine, off they go. That's the purpose of an individual education plan. It's not a black hole that it has actually become. It was never intended that way. It was to give a child extra help, move the child along. It was not to keep them back, and that's what we're actually doing. When you're tying an IEP, an individual education plan, to a Common Core.
Thank you. I'm already fighting for this. I serve as the school board's representative for the legislative committee with the Florida School Boards Association. We made an appeal early and a resolution that we would not support the Common Core as it stood. I represented Palm Beach County in that effort. Certainly not for the ESE students, because it's not equal, it's not equitable for them. I would also include the ELL students, the English language learners. They are going to have much of an issue with this Florida Standards Common Core, as we call it. I've been out in Tallahassee working with our legislators, our legislative delegation right here in Palm Beach County, as well as across the state. So I've already been fighting, and I put my name on the line with Palm Beach County School District, is that we're not ready for implementation. It's hurting our ESE kids, our ELL kids, and it's going to be detrimental for all of our kids. I will stand and fight, and I'm doing it as we speak.
Okay. What is each of your stances on tenure for teachers? Should teachers be paid and retained based on how long they've been employed or the results they achieve with their students?
I think we're looking for quality teachers. As a teacher recruiter for 20 years working in human resources as the chief, I don't believe that we should keep teachers just because they've been in the system for 10, 15, or 20 years. We have to evaluate them on their effectiveness in moving student achievement, their effectiveness in working with the parents, and their effectiveness in teaching. That's critical. And we need to observe our teachers each and every single day, analyze whether they're making a difference, and this is the basis for actually keeping them in their jobs. And as you know, that we're looking at making sure that this is a model that we implement as we move forward. teaching and learning, critical, evaluating teachers, and certainly not tenure, just automatic because you've been there for 5, 10, 15 years.
There, we have actual models to where we actually look at our teachers. We have the VAM that we do when we're evaluating our teachers. And a lot of it is, there's problems with it. When you actually look at a teacher and you say, okay, are you making gains with your students? I don't want to teach ESC because they're not going to make as many gains and it's going to be poor on my score. It's what a child makes within a year. You want a year's worth of growth in that child, and that's what you want from your teachers. And we do need to get more money and more resources to those teachers that can actually are making and meeting those gains of those students, because that's what we actually want. And we have teachers that are not. And we need to not have them around anymore. It's just the way it is. You can't keep a teacher when we're not getting anything out of the teacher. You have to. Unfortunately, it's sad, but it's true. But when it comes to tenure, our teachers do not get a cost of living raises at all, ever. And I'm sure you've read the Palm Beach Post where they finally got raises, and they hadn't had raises in 6 years. And literally, the cost of living raises.
I've told you that my wife has been a teacher for 32 years. She never had any interest in moving into administration, even though it would have meant more money. Being an assistant principal or principal, she enjoyed the teaching, the passion she had was teaching students. What I think needs to be done in the teaching ranks is certainly don't tie all of pay to tenure, but there's really not a career path for people that just want to stay in the classroom. You know, if you become a mentor teacher or a master teacher, you're not paid any different based on that skill than you are based on your years of experience. I was one of the authors of a salary schedule that we put in place in Palm Beach County for principals back in about 2004. It actually differentiates in principal pay based on the kind of school they teach in. If they teach in a more challenging high school, they get paid more than a principal that teaches in a different kind of high school. Middle school and elementary the same, and I think that that's the goal we need to move toward with teachers. We need to develop a salary schedule that rewards teachers for the time they're doing.
I was watching TV the other day and I happened to watch a school board meeting in our county just south of us in Broward County. And they were discussing, the school board was discussing how they were going to handle 2 teachers that showed up intoxicated to school on the last day. And they were having a discussion about what they were going to do. I think all of us would agree in here, if a teacher shows up to school drunk, that should be immediate termination. So to answer your question, what I would do is this. I would go to the teachers union and say, listen, we have to work some things out here where we'll keep your teachers on, the teachers that are performing, but we're not going to allow teachers that are doing things like that, because the reason why they're allowed to stay is because the union backs them. So we have to make some deals with the union and get things squared up. We can't have teachers showing up drunk to school. These are some of the things that I would try to focus on. Thank you.
Okay, staying on that theme, right now, the Palm Beach County School Board is operating at about a $70 million deficit, and there's a property tax increase on the ballot for November. And it was mentioned that our teachers aren't really getting cost of living increases. So from each of you, I'd like your thoughts on the Palm Beach County Schools budget, and how can we find money for good teachers, and where is the money being wasted right now by the district? And I'm going to give, because it's a little more involved, give each of you a minute and a half.
Good question. We'd like to know where it's being wasted. Can you help us out, Mr. Moore, with your history? Okay. We've got a lot of waste out there, a lot of waste. It starts with, we send, I don't laugh, it's the truth, 27 teachers that are not in the classroom, but they're level teachers. That means they have administrative positions, but they're actually paid as a teacher, to New York City, and they stay in wonderful downtown, and they get to see all the shows and everything twice a year. It's every 6 months, 27 of them. Why are we actually bringing that reading service, that reading training here to Palm Beach County? It's Florida. People love to come to Florida. Bring it here. Pair up with Broward, pair up with Dade. Let's offer the training here. Let's save the money there. We waste so much money on nothing.
I mentioned that the budget is $2.3 billion, and you would think that that gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of choices. And certainly there are efficiencies that you can go through and identify in that budget. But putting that budget together is really about setting out priorities. And it's hard work, because there's a lot of momentum with programs that are in place. There's a lot of advocates that want to continue those programs. And you'll hear those people, they'll show up at budget workshops and try to influence the board to continue that program, even though it may not be the same priority as other programs. So I think the tough, heavy lifting is at the board level. It does adopt a budget, and they have to work long and hard on that budget. They're going to adopt a tentative budget in 2 weeks. That's the first action on the school district budget. They've not had a workshop on that budget since the beginning of June, and it's not in balance. So I would say that it really starts with the board, and you've got to have everybody in the room that has a stake, and you've got to make tough choices about what the priorities are and make sure you fund your priorities. If employees are your priority, you make sure that you fund those priorities.
Thank you. I'm going to share a little secret with you guys. Our county's not super honest. What I mean by that is, I know, can you imagine that in Palm Beach County that we're not honest? Guys, listen, the truth is this. I've gone through budgets, I've looked at everything. It's not transparent. When you look at the bidding process for contracts in this county, it's not transparent. I spoke with the gentleman at the school board meeting that came down from New Jersey, and he told me that the bidding process, they wouldn't even tell him who his competitors were. This county has historically failed to tell the people where money goes and how it's spent. The first thing I would do, if I'm in there, I'm going to put the entire budget out for the people. Hey, and let me tell you another thing that our school board does. They love to have closed-door meetings. The only time we should have a closed-door meeting is if it's discussing pertinent information that would be a legal issue. Why are we having closed-door meetings? Let's put it out for the people. And another thing, when I win this election, I'm not going to sit up at the Taj Mahal. I'm going to have my seat in the middle of the thing with the people. That's where I'll be. Thank you.
As your sitting school board member, we have had a balanced budget as long as I've been on the board, so I want to say that we have balanced our budget. But we recognize that we must have desk audits. We want to make sure that the monies that we have go to the school centers and go to the children. So we have been into that district office, and we've been raking it to coals, raking across that to make sure that we don't have any monies in the budget that's actually being used inappropriately. When our teachers attend some of the workshops, much of that money comes through foundations and through grants designated just for that. It's very important for you to know that we have a budget committee that actually works with our community, that gets input from the community, that gives the board input on what things should and should not be cut. But I think we have to remember, too, the funding of the schools in Palm Beach County and in general are still at the level of 2007 and 2008. We used to have 2 meals from the legislature where we could actually have capital funding. That was cut back to 1.5 meal on 1,000. I ask you to actually support us with our referendum for 25 cents. That will give us $33 million for our art, music, and PE. All across the state, many of the schools don't have it. You in Palm Beach County says you believe that we should really emphasize art, music, PE, and thank you.
For each of you, what is your view of the respective roles of the school board, the superintendent, teachers, and parents in the development and selection of classroom curricula, textbooks, etc.?
I'll start. Well, the board role and the superintendent's role is actually spelled out in statute. The board is set up as a policy-making body, and it's collectively. That's not individually. There's 7 board members, so 4 of them have to at least agree on whatever the direction of the school district in order to carry that forward. The superintendent is really the expert in the field to carry that policy out. And so they would take the direction from the board and they would go and implement that through the rest of the staff, the teachers, principals, what have you. It would filter down through the organization. When you talk about the selection of textbooks and those kinds of things, there are some state requirements that govern that, but usually it's a very participative process that starts from the bottom up. There's teachers that sit on committees and evaluate different options for that, and then they bring that recommendation back to the board. But the board ultimately then would make that decision as to what textbook to go with.
Thank you. I think whenever you get into political office, I think that your job is to represent the people, and I think it's that simple. So when it comes to textbooks, what I would do is I would have town hall meetings, and I would get the feedback of the parents and ask them, are there things in the textbooks that you're seeing that you are not okay with? Then we discuss it, we work it out. Doesn't mean that parents are going to get to run the entire show, but their feedback is essential to developing our curriculum. So I think that's what I would do. I'd take it to the people, and I would want to see what their feedback is. Thank you.
With the textbook curriculum committee that Mr. Moore was referring to, they do meet, they do go over a lot. What they're not doing is those that are meeting it are not actually sharing it back with their schools before decisions are made, before it becomes to the board. It's opinions, and then those who are making it are actually working in the curriculum department in the district. So we're not really using the feedback that we're actually getting from our teachers with them individually, especially not the ones going back to the classroom. It would be nice if they could actually take those textbooks that they're looking at back to the classrooms and get actual feedback from their entire grade chair and do it through different schools. Again, one textbook is not going to fit the needs of everyone across this district. And if you actually look, we actually have science books on one side of this district and different science books on the different side of this district. And the reason being is just because of the money. But it's the exact same textbook. The exact same textbook. We just bought them because they were a new version and we need to replenish our version every 3 years, depending on the subject. It's the exact same textbook. Why do we waste the money? What do we do with it? Nothing. Why do we not have input? Why do we need to change? If we need to change, why is that change there? Just because it's Common Core on the top of it. Okay, so we had to buy it. It's a waste of money.
You've heard the explanation of the process. It is at the local level for textbook selection, and we do have committees that are representative of the communities, looking at the material, making input before it actually comes to the board for approval. I do believe that that can be expanded because some people never ever get a chance to have input, and sometimes that is a limited scope. One of the things that I would like to do as I move forward is to make sure that before we adopt any book, even though we may go through the local process of having the committee, experts talking with us about it, working in our groups within the school, that we do bring it out and showcase it to our communities through our education advisory boards in Royal Palm Beach, Wellington, and the Loxahatchee and the Glades area, and tell people this is what we're getting ready to vote upon. What's your thoughts and opinions? And certainly making sure that teachers weigh in the most on that process as well as parents. So I believe that process can be tweaked a little bit so that we can get more input. Thank you.
As a follow-up to that question, one of my friends who lives here in Wellington has 2 kids in the Palm Beach County School District. And on more than one occasion, he's brought it to my attention and other people's attention that some of the reading material that his kids read is not age appropriate. There was one particular time where his daughter came home with a book that she was not comfortable reading. She was almost embarrassed by what was in it and to show it to him. So as a follow-up, what do you think the role of parents in choosing the reading material for classes should be?
Are you referring to literature books?
Yeah.
Well, just last year, beginning last year, you may remember if you go to the board meetings that we did have a parent from Palm Beach Central that actually came and was totally appalled and refused to let his daughter read the book, and the school board looked at it and they were appalled, and it was now taken off the list. When your child reads a summer reading book, that is actually not picked at the district, it's actually picked at your school level. And that is where that comes from. And a lot of them rotate from year to year. When my oldest son was in 6th grade, actually during the school year, it wasn't even summer reading, he was asked to read a book. Started out great. I'm like, oh, this is a pretty good book, because of course I'm reading it too. We got halfway through the book, and I'm like, okay, stop. You're not reading it. I did not feel it was appropriate for him to be reading that type of material at a 9th grader. It just was not appropriate. Sent a note into the teacher, I'm like, you will not be reading this, you need to assign him a different book. Of course, I were on a phone call, we had to get the principal involved. He's not reading it. Did it stop it for the other kids? No, it didn't. Did the other parents call? I have no clue. But we really do need to actually look at the material that the kids are reading that we're actually doing rather than at school level, because some teachers may think it is appropriate. Some teachers may not, but we do need to look at it. And I don't mean to censor books or anything like that, but we need to look at the actual content, what it is, and the grade level.
And again, I mentioned my wife, this all comes from her experience as a reading teacher. The level, all the books are indexed based on their levels. And certainly you can achieve the same reading goal with a different book. So it doesn't have to be a prescribed book. And so I think there ought to be a lot of flexibility given if there's issues with parents where they can bring them to the attention of the teacher and if need be the principal and get an alternative book assigned to their child so that it's not inappropriate in their eyes. It's kind of hard in today's day to kind of know what people's norms are. They're changing so quickly around us. But I think every parent should have the right to set out what the expectations for their child is, and I think that can be accomplished easily without sacrificing the instruction.
Thank you. I wish that my opponent was here tonight, and I'm not going to refer to her. I guess I have to a little bit for this one, though. I think people in this country are tired of having things rammed down their throat. And I think that that's where the contrast between myself and my opponent really comes in. If there's material that a family is not comfortable with their child reading, they absolutely should be able to bring that to the attention and not have to have their child do something that they think that is against what their morals and values are. I think that again, I wish my opponent was here because I think that highlights a big difference between myself and my opponent. I believe that the parents should have the ability to make a stand on things that they're not comfortable with. Thank you.
And I want to be clear that parents are powerful. And this is why I work with the educational advisory boards in the communities where we invite parents to have input with the area superintendents and the principals once a month in Wellington, Royal Palm Beach, the Glades area, wherever we have an active advisory board. Parents, you do control what happens to your child in and out of school. And your voice is important. As your school board member, I would always want you to know that you have access to the principal, you have access to teachers, as well as the school board and the superintendent. And your voice is the final voice as to what happens to your children in school. And if you ever have a concern, whether it's the reading material, how you feel your child is being handled in any way, shape, or form, I do expect for you to take a stand and do what has to be done so that we can get to the right medium for the best advantages and success of your children. Thank you.
Incidentally, the parent you mentioned is the person I was referring to.
Well, I actually read that book after that meeting to see what it was all about.
All right. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for a few minutes and let you raise your hands if you have any questions you'd like to ask. So, for each of you, Do you have any specific changes you want to make in school policies, programs, or the various school curricula being offered? And if so, what changes do you want to make and why? Minute and a half.
Well, I'm looking at literacy. I think we have to get back to basics. We need to make sure we put a lot of emphasis on reading and math skills for all of our children. It's very important that we start early. One thing that I think is really great that the Palm Beach County School District has partnered with the Children's Service Council and the county, working with the Lutheran group to actually do Head Start now. Because we've got to make sure that we get curriculums ready for children at Head Start level. We have VPK programs which have been extended during my tenure as school board member because we've got to start that basic reading, writing, language, the arts early for those that are 4 years old. And we have the programs now with VPK at most of our schools that's free, with Title I funds for some, for ESC, so we've got to do it. But we've got to start early with these processes. And it's very, very important that we put emphasis on teaching and learning and less testing. Thank you. I do believe in assessments. I do believe in quality, but we've got to make sure our students are learning. So we've got to have the best teachers, the best curriculums, and we've got to really look at literacy and reading, looking at those reading programs that actually have been very, very productive in moving student achievement and those math programs. So as a board member, I invest in that.
Our literacy program right now is a year in. We're using Pontus and Pinnell. Our scores, again, were low. We're failing our kids in reading. And we're failing them from the very beginning. And when you actually look at the guidelines for promotion from year to year, we're actually promoting our kindergartners and first graders when they're not even ready. We're not getting them what they need when they're in kindergarten. So what's happening is they're paying the price come third grade. Fondas of Now is a fine program. It's research-based, it's fitting the needs, it follows it's very easy to follow literally from kindergarten through 12th grade, where our students actually still need reading in 12th grade. What we're actually not doing for our kids is offering additional reading supports. Different schools have different things that are getting different outcomes. But when you actually look at those schools that are getting the best income, the best for their buck, because the schools are actually buying this. It's not the district, it's the schools, it's the PTAs that are buying these programs for the kids. A lot of our schools right here in Wellington, they bought the program because of the money they got from Wellington. So the district isn't providing the services, it's the individual principals, it's the teachers that are going forward. That's what's helping our kids. But unfortunately, to do that for our middle schoolers, it's too late. Our kindergartners and our first graders and our second graders and our third graders, they needed it. We need to actually start focusing on literacy a lot earlier than we are. We're waiting for that red flag, that third grade red flag. Or actually now it's second grade diagnostics.
I think the question asked about programs, and I'm going to talk more about a program that I think needs to be strengthened at the school district, and it's really to try to not lose the talent of some of the senior people that are working in the district before they exit into retirement. And I think that although there's a lot of informal work where folks are mentoring folks that are working with in the academic or even in the business side, there's not a formal structure for mentoring, and people aren't assigned a mentor. Case in point, the lead academic person for the school district, chief academic officer, is slated to retire in October. And to my knowledge, there's not been any discussion about who potentially will replace that person. There's not been any effort to try to get somebody in. So there's some overlap before that person heads out the door. If she's not leaving the area, maybe you can do that after retirement by bringing her back if she's willing to do that. But I think more formalizing that process so that you don't lose, the institutional knowledge of some of these lifelong educators as they walk out the door into retirement would be a program I'd work on.
Can you repeat the question for me?
Do you have any specific changes you want to make in school policies, programs, or the various school curricula being offered? And if so, what changes do you want to make and why?
Hey guys, wake up in here. I see people getting a little tired. Wake up. Okay, listen, there's not going to be a curriculum. There's not going to be anything if we don't stop Common Core. It's the #1 issue in here. There's not going to be anything else to do unless we stop Common Core. And Marcia, I really appreciate talking with you, and I understand your perspective on Common Core, and I appreciate it. I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about the lady I'm running against, because she's been the person that's been tapped to implement Common Core in this state. Please get a chance to go home. The Greater Florida Consortium of School Boards, she was just elected president of that. She's been tapped to roll the whole thing out. So, there's not going to be a curriculum if we don't stop Common Core. I'm a teacher. I can talk to you about curriculum for days. I can talk to you about differentiation. I've been doing that for the past 5 years. If we don't stand on Common Core, there's not going to be a public school system left. Thank you.
See, we've got some questions in the audience. You can let us know if it's for a specific member of the panel or for everybody, and we give each of you a minute to answer.
This is for the whole panel. Dennis Lip, Waxahachie Groves. I have no students in school anymore, thank God. Anyway, the question is this: is the school board decided to go on its own and go out and hire a inspector general? The Inspector General that was hired, as you all know, was from the ranks of the accounting department. And God only knows accountants don't make very good Inspector Generals. Going forward, I don't want anybody to comment on the current lawsuit going on because that wouldn't be appropriate. Do you look forward into strengthening the current in-house Inspector General, or would you do the right thing, not to bias anybody, but do the right thing and hire the county's Inspector General?
It needs to be outside. Should have always been outside. When you're inside, it's hard to really babysit yourself when you're on the inside. Yes, you watch the board meetings and you read the paper and there is a mess, but it should have always been on the outside. You can't check yourself when you got friends and you owe your friends, and it does not work. It does not make good business. It never has, it never will. And they learned their lesson. Unfortunately, it was a very public and nasty lesson, but it does need to be on the outside.
The current situation is a Inspector General that reports directly to the school board. It was hired by the school board. And the individual that's in that position didn't come out of the accounting department. He was previously the internal audit director, which was also a position that reported directly to the school board. When the board went through these deliberations, when the county first installed the Inspector General, one of the tough issues the board faced was the price tag that came with joining the county, because the school district was such a large organization. It was, and I can't remember what the number was, but it was going to be a substantial amount of money they would have to pay the county in order to participate with the county Inspector General. And that really swayed the school board in going with that. They could do it less expensively with their own individual. When they went through that recruitment process, they ended up converting a internal auditor into an Inspector General. I think a harder look at the credentials of an Inspector General were probably in order when they had that recruitment process.
I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Casino. There's a great scene. De Niro says, you're either in on it or you're too dumb to see it. Either way, you gotta go. That's how I'd summarize that situation. So, listen, I don't know who this guy is, but I know that he hasn't caught anything, I can tell you that. And I know that he was brought up internally, I can tell you that. So the question we have to sit here and talk about as adults, why was he there? We could, I have my theories on that, but we'll talk about that after. So, but bottom line is, we need to bring a fresh set of eyes in. We need to break up this the corruption in this county, the stuff that's been going on here, has been going on a long time, and I'm going to get in there and I'm going to try to clean it up. Thank you.
I believe in honesty and integrity. And when we looked at the Office of Inspector General, we considered the outside. And there were issues as it related to the money. So that was part of the decision for the board to stay on the inside. Yes, there have been some issues with our Inspector General, more so from human resources kinds of things. There has not been any issue with our current Inspector General as far as him getting the job done that he's been assigned to do, but there have been some problems with internal strife with people that work in that department. It's truly important that we invest the money to get what we need to get. When we went on the inside, it was because we did not have the monies necessary to move forward. If you look right now, there's still cities saying that they don't have the monies to do what they need to do. I think we're learning from this process because as we look at the whole thing, it would have been nicer if we had had somebody from the outside and if they had had problems with their HR or whatever in their department, it wouldn't have fallen back on the board. But as we learn, this is a new Inspector General trying to do the best job possible. This board will actually analyze where we go from here as to whether we go outside or inside, and that has not been yet determined by me or the board. Thank you.
Somebody else can say. Here we go.
Hi, Julie Mock. I live here in Wellington. I have 4 kids in the school system here in Wellington, and IEPs and 504s are near and dear to my heart. I have 3 kids, 3 of my 4 on them, but I'm going to take a different direction. I moved around about every 3 years growing up, and moved here from Tennessee about 4 years ago, and I was shocked at the education here. I feel like my kids have gone backwards, and that's really unfortunate. But you've all been here a very long time, but one of the questions that I have is what do you have to offer that's fresh? Have you looked outside of the forests that were mired in here to see what ideas you can bring in from the outside that might help improve the educational system here? Are there model school boards that you've looked at that you think would be something that Palm Beach County can implement and move toward here? Thank you.
We work with the Council of Great City Schools, and they are an umbrella nationally of best practices as it relates to improving student achievement. We actually work closely with trying to find the best teachers, because it really starts in the classroom with the teachers. That's a piece of it. And we also work closely with many entities as it relates to outstanding curriculum programs. We are a part of the assessment as we look across the states to see what's working in other states and what is not working in other states to bring forth to our students. A lot has to do with the parents, and I'm happy that you're a great parent and you're on it, but we've got to also look at the whole picture, the materials, the textbooks, the curriculum, the professional development, with working with our teachers so that they can be ready to do what's necessary to move student achievement, and certainly the parents. So as a school district, we try to make sure that we have that professional development arm going on continuously so that we can get information as it relates to great teaching, great instruction, great materials to take our students to the next level. Thank you.
I don't know if you get to watch the board meetings or whatnot, but just last year, one of the board members had actually book that was on Montgomery schools in Maryland, which is the #1 school district in the country, the #1 state in education in the country. And it was regarding red zones and the green zones and actually bringing it together. And it's a great book, so if you have a chance, Barnes & Noble, it's a great book. And it actually brings in what you can actually do for your students, and it's something totally different than anything we're doing in the state of Florida. Actually, if you also, from Tennessee, you might know Johnson City and Elizabethton and Bristol. Okay, what they're doing there, we can do fabulously right here in Palm Beach County alone. It's actually bringing in the different zones and meeting the different needs of the kids and actually breaking it up and following through. In that area of Tennessee, they actually follow the kids through from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. We don't do that in Palm Beach County. You know, the teacher has them for 180 days, and then the next teacher has them for 180 days, and the next teacher. So there's no follow through. In Palm Beach County, they don't even look at that as a need. They talk about it every couple of years, but no action's ever taken, no plan. You have to remember, this is a district with no plan. So how are we supposed to have change when we don't even know what the plan is that we're doing?
I've been retired for 3 years, but during my tenure with the school district, it was common practice several times a year to bring in a nationally renowned educator and they would speak to all of the principals as well as board members that would be invited to those meetings. And they would just talk about their successes and how they achieved those successes. And all of the academic staff, the senior academic staff, was in the room as well. I know that they have discarded that practice. They have not done that. I don't think they've done that since I've left. I think they need to reinstitute something on that line so that you do have those ideas coming into you. You know, there's successes all around the nation. They're hard to come by, but there's folks that are out there making tough situations work and improving education for kids. And then you have a lot of hardworking, dedicated professionals in the school district. And I think that those folks would then take and run with those kinds of ideas and concepts as long as they were supported by a board that would move that to the top of the priority list in the budgeting process.
Thank you for the question, Julie. When I win this election, this will be my job. Most of our board members, I think all of our board members, have other jobs. So the first thing I would do, this would be my full-time job. And I think the biggest thing this county needs is some energy. Because energy comes from the top and it trickles down. So that's the first thing I think I would try to implement. Just bring some energy to this thing. Secondly, the most important thing that the school board is designed to do is maintain accountability, maintain transparency. That's really the function of the board, is to keep things in check. So when you go to vote, I think what you want to decide is am I putting someone in there that's not going to be bought off, that's going to look out specifically for the interests of the children? I think that's what we need in this county. Thank you.
It's a great idea in theory, but in reality it just doesn't work. And the reason is we have given, the voters have given the Inspector General all the authority, so to speak, but none of the policing power. About all she can do is call out something that is a policy change or a policy issue. There's no arresting capabilities, there's no penalty phase. With the Ethics Commission, you can be fined $500 or $1,000. There is no penalty phase with the County Inspector General. So if she found some wrongdoing that was considered illegal, sure, she can then pursue it from that part. But when an investigation is done into Wellington and it's found out that the greatest crime that Wellington had committed was you should have a 5-gallon bottle of Deer Park water instead of individual 16-ounce bottles. And that's one of the ways that we can promote better government in Wellington. There's no teeth in the Inspector General.
Okay, thank you. At this point,
I think it's almost 1:30. Your questions were great. If you have questions on an individual basis, I think the candidates can stay for a few minutes.
okay.
We have been requested to end it by some of our members have to back to work.
Okay, well, I think the candidates did a great job, particularly with the one minute